Hey guys, welcome to a new video on Andertons TV called Top Tips for Your New Guitar. And today, Pete and I are taking an affordable guitar, a brand new affordable guitar, and talking about what some of the simplest things that you can do to your brand new guitar to make it play even better.
Yes.
So this is a Squier Classic Vibe Stratocaster. It's brand new and it's straight out the box. And some of the things about this guitar that are immediately noticeable, probably because in its journey from the factory over to the UK it would have been sat in a container for several weeks, is slightly scratchy frets. Hope you can hear this. There you go, it's a good one. And that's really just because the fret wire is of a certain standard, and then you get a little bit of humidity builds up on those, so a little bit of minor tarnishing whilst it's in transit. And because it's an affordable guitar, you can't really expect someone to spend a lot of time on that detail. So that's kind of why we're going to show you how to do it. We're going to talk about the neck and making sure the neck's the right angle. We're going to talk about the nut and what you can do to ensure the nut is as friction-free as possible. That'll help with tuning. We're going to show you how what a difference restringing it will make. Again, fresh set of strings on any new guitar makes a massive difference. We are going to show you what happens if you adjust pickup heights, and for Stratocaster owners or for people with this kind of trem system, I'm also going to show you how you set a floating trem.
Floating trem.
Of course, if your guitar doesn't have a trem system, or perhaps it has a Floyd Rose trem system, that might be a little bit different. We've also got, for a bit of a bonus, if you stay all the way to the end, and this is more out of our own curiosity.
Yeah.
Someone has sent us these really heavy cold steel neck plates.
What Nick Greer from Greer Amps has sent.
And he claims that if I replace this neck plate with this neck plate, here you are, Mr. Pete, it will radically change the tone of my guitar.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's start with the most important thing I think on the guitar, which is the neck. The neck on an electric guitar is a movable piece of wood, right? And it's things like the string tension and humidity and things like that, temperature changes, humidity changes can make the neck move a little bit.
Yeah.
And if it's too far moving this way, you'll find you have a very high action. It's difficult to, get very difficult to play, and you'll get intonation issues. If it's too far back this way, you'll have a super low action and potentially not enough clearance over the strings for it to be, not enough clearance over the frets for it to be sort of rattle free.
Yeah.
And when it's just right, it'll give you a nice sensible action and should be relatively fret buzz free.
Yeah.
Now, what you need to do to be able to sort of know how you're doing is you need to understand how to look down the side of the neck. Hopefully, I don't know if Pete's camera's going to pick this up.
Let me see if I can.
You can look from either end. And what we're really looking for is a neck that is very, very slightly concave. All right, so concave meaning it's going to go, I'll do it to this camera actually, it's going to go this way. All right, so it should have a slight dip in the middle of it. Very slight, okay?
Yeah.
This neck is actually a little too straight, and what that means is it's quite rattly. Quite comfy to play because it's super low action, but it's a little rattly. So to adjust the neck, you need your Allen key, the key d'Allen. These, if you buy a brand new guitar, you almost always get an Allen key that fits on the neck and an Allen key that adjusts the grub screws on the trem.
Should be in the box.
If you don't have one of these, maybe you bought your guitar secondhand, maybe it hasn't shipped with it, whatever, you can obviously buy Allen keys from any kind of hardware store, but you can also buy these cool little sort of, Swiss Army penknife things that have various tools in them, like Allen keys and screwdrivers and stuff that you can do.
Yeah.
And
that one comes with an Ibanez actually.
Does it? We sell loads of these. This is a particularly popular one here by a company called Groove Tech. Anyway, links in the description below. I'll show you some of the tools. So, what I'm doing here, Mr. Pete,
is
Mr.
Lee, let me
I'm taking the Allen key and I'm putting it in the hole at the top and I'm wiggling it till it goes in. All right, now, in one direction, I'm going to loosen the truss rod, and that will allow the neck to come forward. And in the other direction, I'm going to tighten the truss rod, and that will pull the neck backwards. So what I want to do on this actually is slightly loosen the truss rod. Now, I know that on Fender guitars, if I'm holding it like this, moving the Allen key away from me is typically what loosens the truss rod. You should be able to feel resistance in the truss rod between loosening and tightening. So tightening pulls the neck backwards, loosening allows the neck to go forward. Now you've probably noticed there that I made a very, very small adjustment, and then I'm going to check again.
It's really difficult to see, but
and it is,
we'll try our best.
Marginally better now. I think I want to make one slight more adjustment.
Yeah, I would say small adjustments is key here, because you also have to remember there's a rod that goes to it. Sometimes it has to just settle in a little bit. The neck has to settle itself.
There you go, listen. So all that buzz has gone away. That was very small adjustments, and really that particular thing that I've just done, that's about the only thing that you can do on a guitar where if you overdo it, you can sort of irreversibly damage your guitar, particularly with tightening rather than loosening. So it's not
a little bit at a time.
It's not like you're trying to tighten up a bolt as hard as it'll go or anything like that. A little bit at a time, check. And there you go. So that's...
You can actually see that. If you hold it up to me here, just see if I can catch that. Kind of.
Now some people will actually end up going, I've got my micrometer, and they'll be putting it on the 12th fret and they'll be going, how many? Personally, I've never used a micrometer like that to set my guitars up because I kind of know how I like it to feel.
Yes.
And I think, again, you can, for me personally, I almost feel like it is easier to just do it to feel than it is, because some people will like a higher action, some people will like a lower action, depending on how it feels. I've got to say, again, manufacturers for the last 50 odd years are either putting truss rod adjustment at this end or at this end, and it's really, really easy to do without taking the neck off. Vintage guitars and some replicas of vintage guitars, literally you have to take the neck off to do that adjustment, and that is a bit more fiddly. Next two things I'm going to do is restring it and nourish the fretboard, all right? Now, this is cool. This is a little soft rug from Ernie Ball. It's just designed so you can put your guitar on top of it like that and not damage the back of the guitar, which I quite like that. Do be careful, again, if you're going to put your guitar onto a surface, if you've got grit and dirt and stuff on that surface, you might scratch the back of your guitar, so be careful there. Likewise, when you're using polishing cloths, again, if you've got a polishing cloth that's got grit and dirt in it because you use it just as a general household kind of cloth, you're rubbing like this, you're going to get swirls and stuff on your guitar, which you might not want. Now, I personally just cut all 6 strings off my guitar at the same time and restring it. Some people prefer to do it one at a time, particularly if you've got an unusual tremolo system like a Bigsby.
Or the Gibson one where the thing falls off, easier to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm using a tool to undo those strings, just a little bit on each one. You can, of course, do this by hand. It just takes a bit longer. And you've got, the plastic kind of manual versions of this as well, which are super cheap and pretty quick. So I'm just doing that. Now, some of you may go, it's a brand new guitar with a brand new set of strings on it. Why are you taking the strings off? And again, that's just purely and simply that the kind of strings that often are put on Far Eastern guitars will be very, very cheap. Once they've been out the packet for 6 or 8 weeks, which is often how long these guitars are in transit, you notice it's lost that sort of brand new set of strings.
You can see some of them. I don't know if we can get that on here, but some of them kind of got a bit of rust on it. And
again, everyone's going to have their own different technique here. I literally just cut the 6 strings off about halfway down, and then I kind of wrap a set up like this so that I can stick them in the bin, and then I just do the same.
There are actually companies out there that'll take your old strings and recycle them and make jewellery out of them or other things, So
how cool is that?
I think Ernie Ball actually got this the way you can send them in and then they will use them for other things. Because, it is a lot of waste,
Now, the strings should just pop out the back of the guitar. This is always a bit fiddly because you've got the hole in the string block that's got to try and line up with the hole on the back of the scratch plate.
Especially if you've got a floating trim.
He says, and none of them coming out. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to literally fast forward this bit and take the back plate off, which I need to do to adjust the trem system anyway.
So,
right, so that's what's in there.
Can we just show what's in there?
Here's another super handy tip. If you're finding that the strings are a little bit stuck in the trem block and like the ball on the end of them just won't come out, take the thickest string, which is usually the easiest one to get out, and just poke it through from the top. Wiggle, wiggle. There you go. That one's out. Next then, what I'm going to do first is polish the frets. Now, again, you can buy, these actually aren't terribly expensive, but you can buy special fret polishing kits from Dunlop. What's the model number of this? This is called a fret collar, a System 65 fret collar from Jim Dunlop. And you get 2 fret collars, each with a different rating on them for the thickness of the fret. And you get a piece of very, very, very fine, I don't even want to say sandpaper, it's like wet and dry, isn't it?
It's
just like
super fine.
Super, super fine.
Grit billion. Or is it grit?
So you find out which one of these frets, which one of these collars fits over your frets better. So mine is the slightly wider one here.
I'm just gonna.
And then you pop this over here and polish away.
Can't really see, but there we are, that's it.
Okay, now if I'm totally honest with you, wow, you can visually see the difference there straight away. Look at that one compared to that one. That's insane. Pete's now scrolling down the neck there and you can see all the frets that I haven't polished yet except for the very top one. Now I'm just going to polish over these quickly. One of the things I should say, this is not a fret dress. You might hear, you might see guitar shops offering a service called a fret dress. This is not that. A fret dress is when, if you've played a guitar for a long time, played it a lot, you'll see the strings themselves will start to make little grooves in the frets. And if those grooves get too deep, you get like an imbalance where some frets are a little higher than others. And a fret dress is where somebody goes along and kind of reprofiles the frets. So that is a much longer and different process to this. So
re-level them.
I'm just literally doing a very cursory polish of the frets here.
That's incredible.
Okay, now.
Wow, that's such a difference.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
The next thing I like to do, and especially since some of the more affordable brands started using Laurel fingerboards instead of rosewood fingerboards, is nourish the fingerboard. And what I like, there's lots of, lemon oil is traditionally what you would use to nourish a rosewood fingerboard.
Yeah.
You typically you wouldn't do this on a maple fretboard because the grain is too tight, the oil doesn't seep in.
Yeah, it might be.
But on a Laurel or a rosewood fretboard, it's a slightly more open grain and you can nourish it. It stops the fretboard drying out. And it just visually looks nice. And the nice thing about this particular wax that I'm using, so I'm using a wax rather than oil. This is from a small British company based out of London called Monty's Guitars.
Monty's Espresso, it's called.
Yeah, he's put a dye in the wax, which actually he developed when he was doing relicking for clients. If somebody wanted their guitar relicked, he developed like
look at the difference.
He developed something that he could put on a guitar and kind of, it sort of seeped into the wood rather and made it just look older and like smokier. And it works really, really well on a fretboard. Now, what's quite clever about this Monty Espresso stuff is the dye is quite subtle, so it's not, it doesn't come off on your fingers whilst you're playing the guitar. But what it does mean is it potentially takes maybe 2 or 3 applications before you start going, wow, that's a hell of a lot darker. But you can see...
Man, this when you see this angle where you're doing it now, it just makes such a difference.
Yeah. Again, links below for where to buy little pots of this Monty's wax. A pot like that, honestly, I've probably had this pot for 6 or 7 months. I've probably done 20 or 30 necks with it already, and I've barely made a dent on it. So I think probably fair to say that's a lifetime supply there. They actually sell it in a bigger, if you want they do a Monty's mug full of it, which is kind of fun. But again, you'd have enough wax in there to do an army of guitars. So that's kind of it, really.
What a difference, man.
Next, this bit here is the nut. Okay, so the nut is the strings slide through the nut. They keep the string spacing correct, and it goes into the nut before it goes into the machine heads. If you have sticky nuts, that's probably one of the #1 causes of guitars going out of tune.
Yeah.
And it's particularly a problem if you, for instance, use tremolo systems a lot and things like that. Lots of big bends.
Yeah.
So Now, what I'm going to use the blue tool for, this is a company called Big Ben's Nut Sauce. They're kind of one of the original. Now, the little blue thing is just used to sort of clean out any gunk that might be in the grooves. Again, it's a brand new guitar, this one, so we're not necessarily cleaning a ton of gunk out here. The nut sauce is designed to lubricate the strings as they go through the nut. And again, crazy little things like this makes a massive difference. Okay, so here we go. We'll just put a little bit inside of each one of these. If you don't lose that, I think there's probably enough nut sauce there to last you forever and ever. So there we are. We now have a
freshly lubed nut.
That's that.
Yeah.
Now,
easy.
What else do I need to do? Okay, this is literally largely experimental and absolutely not necessary at all, but I am interested to see what one of these new plates, neck plates, does. So I'm gonna literally take the neck off. I've spent obviously my whole life around guitars. I'm not by any means a qualified technician, but so I kind of feel everything I've learned is just by doing stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I own a few really expensive guitars, and honestly, if you're not prepared to just do a little bit of maintenance on them from time to time, they're terrible. And I've also owned classic vibe guitars. I own Squier classic vibe guitars that, again, I'm quite happy to do a bit of this sort of stuff too.
Yeah.
And I can make them play pretty much as well as an expensive guitar. So there's the old plate off. You can see actually that the neck is actually fairly firmly in the pocket. That's what it looks like if it's not attached. So I can actually just leave that laying down, I guess, like this.
Let me just show you the difference in these two plates. I mean, it's difficult to see, but
I'm not 1,000,000% sure that we're even selling these Greer neck plates. If we are, there'll be a link below. If we're not, I'm sure you can get them direct from the Greer website.
You can.
Greer's an American company, so I suspect they might be a little easier to find over there. I'm guessing Greer's
about
probably
23 quid.
Are they as much as that?
$23, yeah.
Okay, but I'm guessing...
Look at that. That's a big...
I'm guessing
chunky.
Other companies must make something similar, right? Or has Nick literally invented this?
Don't know. But it looks cool.
We're ready to restring now. I should talk about some of these tools that I've got here. If you're looking for gifts, maybe for guitar players that you know, there's a cool kit, again, from Groove Tech called the Stage Hand, which has got loads of tools in it. And if you want the super deluxe Groove Tech one, it's called the Guitar Player Tech Kit, and that's got screwdrivers and wire clippers and all sorts of Allen keys and a pouch for it to go in.
I've got that little kit there.
You got that one?
Brilliant.
We are going to restring the guitar now. We are going to use Ernie Ball 10-48. That is mine and Pete's favourite string.
Yeah, we love the balls.
Yeah, favourite gauge, favourite brand. Probably the best-selling gauge and brand of string as well. But there are millions and millions of alternatives.
And there'll be millions of comments in the comment section saying, you should use these, you should use this. Use whatever you like. That's all fine.
The only way to know what your favourite set of strings is to go and try a few different brands and choose. Just because someone else says something's good is utterly meaningless. Okay, this is a bit of luxury here, probably a bit unnecessary if I'm totally honest with you, but why not? We've got one, so we might as well use it. This is a neck cradle with a built-in tuner. How about that?
Yeah, cradle of filth.
You can buy, you don't need, to be honest with you, you don't need a neck cradle if you don't want one, and there are other neck cradles available too. This workbench is really not quite big enough, but that will do.
Look at that though.
It's kind of cool, isn't it? The tuner's built in, so I've got my guitar nice and level here. Now, most affordable guitars will come with 9 to 42 gauge strings on it, which is a little bit lighter than 10 to 46. And if you would prefer to stay with that string gauge, that's totally fine. But yes, try some different gauges. You never know.
Yeah. You have to get used to them anyway, you have to...
Right.
Anyway.
Now again, this is just my technique. Right, I put all 6 strings through the back of the guitar first.
This is Lee's technique.
This is my technique. Right.
There we are.
Now, This particular guitar has vintage style Fender tuners on it.
The best.
I honestly do feel
ever.
they're so easy to restring because I haven't cut the string down yet, but essentially the idea is the string goes in the hole here, and then the kind of that first bit of the wraparound is sort of it's an easy movement.
Yeah.
If you don't have the vintage style ones, normally what will happen is there'll be a hole on the side, it'll go through like that, and again you wind it on from there. Now, again, different people will have different preferences here. I don't feel you need too many winds around the thicker strings.
Yeah,
so what I tend to do is I tend to cut the string off to about here.
Yeah.
I think I've probably gone I use that sort of like 3 things up as a marker.
3 tuner picks up.
In it goes, and then again, I do that first wrap kind of almost manually by hand, and then...
Yay!
So here we go, we're winding it on. I'm probably going to get a couple of winds. There we go. Now, again, I'm sure there's tons of videos online about how to restring guitars. All you're trying to do is make sure that on a 6-a-side headstock, so all the strings are going in from that side. And when you've got a 3-a-side headstock, you want the ones on this side going in that way and the 3 on this side going in that way. And you want the string to wind down the machine head, right? So you want it, I hope that you know what I mean.
That makes sense.
Okay, next one, same kind of thing. Again, we're just basically maybe taking a couple of machine heads up for the sort of size, pokey in here, and I am just going to quickly tune this to pitch. I've done a very basic quick tune-up here, but that's not kind of the end of the restringing process because we're going to talk about trying to pull some of the slack out of the strings before we go on, and Pete's got some tips about that. And I am just going to check the neck again because we've put a slightly heavier gauge of string on it. It might just need, no, that hasn't moved at all. That's good. Good stuff. But I was just going to check, because sometimes if you change the gauge of the string, you find that the neck moves a little bit. Yeah. I did want to make this tremolo floating. So you can see that Squier Classic Vibe typically out the box comes with the tremolo system flat to the body. Lots of players like to have it just floating away from the body so you can get a little bit more vibrato out of it. So that's, again, super easy job. So tremolo systems are a very simple mechanism. The strings have gone into the back of this trem block here. The strings, when they're tuned to tension, are essentially pulling the block that way. And then these springs are counter sort of pulling it that way. Yeah. If you want the trem system flush to the body, all you do is you make sure that the tension on these springs is greater than the tension on the strings, and you do that by screwing these in. So you can screw the claw that way. You can put more springs on. Yeah. Eric Clapton literally puts a piece of wood into this cavity here so that it's physically stops. Now, of course, what I want to do is I want the trem system to float a bit. So I'm going to reduce the tension on the springs by moving the claw. Well, you can see what loosening the claw. That was the word I was looking for, Mr. P. Okay, so we are there. Now I've probably loosened those screws off maybe a good 0.5 centimetre, maybe even a bit more than that, 6 or 7 mil. Yeah. And what I've got now, if we come in here, is just the faintest gap between the trem plate and the body of the guitar, meaning now I can do a little bit of subtle vibrato. Some players might want it higher than, might want their trem system to come off a bit more. So now what I've got to do is tune the guitar. Yeah. So again, a bit of fast forwarding. Okay, all right. I should just say as well, as soon as you have the trem floating, as you're adjusting the tuning of the strings, you're also adjusting the way that the trem floats very slightly. Yeah, so again, it takes a little bit longer to tune the guitar, and if you can't be bothered with all that faff, again, it's another one of the reasons why players like to have the trem system flat to the body. So these are brand new strings, and of course, even though we've stretched them out quite a lot by tuning them, there will be some more stretch in them. And now you were saying...
Yeah, there's two ways of doing it. So, if you just want to do it quickly, you just pull on the strings.
I do it like this.
Yeah, you just pull on the string, not too hard, but just make sure that it settles in. Because especially with these strings here, so it's a wire, and it's another wire wrapped around a wire like that. So what happens when you stretch down all the way down, especially the 3 lower strings, they got it right. What happens is that this is the wrapping around. So when you pull it, they will, inevitably separate a little bit. And what happens when that happens is you will get dirt in these little gaps. Dirt, sweat, fat, whatever that comes out of your fingers, finger gunk, and the strings will then go off quicker, right? So that's why people like to use Alexia strings, because they've got a wrap coating around it. Yeah. So even when you pull it, that doesn't happen. So they last longer, right? So what I like to do, instead of pulling the strings, I just like to pull this bit, because this is the bit
you don't touch. Really,
this is the bit there. That's where you don't play, and the bit down there where it's wrapped around the ball or the end, and that. So those are the 2 places I just like to just pull them slightly here and make sure that's, and then do the same thing.
Like
just
this.
Yeah, like that. Just make sure, and then I let everything else settle in on its own.
I'll show you why we do that as well. Maybe if Pete tunes in on the tuner.
Hang on.
So there's my A string, which I haven't stretched yet, tuned to pitch. All right. If I pull some of that slack out of it, maybe I'll try and use Pete's method rather than my method.
Yeah, because you can get another week or 2 weeks life out of them if you do that.
So what if I... All right, so we've now dropped to a G sharp.
Yeah.
All right, so that's how much...
Just by pulling those 2 bits.
Yeah, so what's going to actually happen if you don't do this artificial pulling, that will just... Your string, through normal playing, will just take like a day or 2 to kind of settle down before it stays in tune.
Yeah.
If we do this artificial pulling, what we're really doing is hopefully, immediately now we'll have tuning stability. Anyway, so I'm going to just do that, and we'll fast forward through that. And again,
so just to really add something with the 3 higher strings, they're not. There's just a piece of wire essentially. That's why you don't. I would just do it here, because this is the bit. This the winding that needs to be settled in, and it's the string around the ball end.
You pull here.
I would I'll just pull here, like pull it like that.
This is all the tips that 20 years touring give you.
No, it's just it's a tip if you want your strings to last slightly longer. That's my top tip for that.
Pete and I restring guitars sometimes before we're about to do a video. So it's really important that you kind of know that you can then do that video or play that song, and not every 2 minutes be going, oh God, I've got to tune the guitar again. Anywho.
But essentially, and I actually got that tip from Dave Dole from Martin Custom Shop.
I thought you were going to say Dave Grohl.
Yeah.
I was going to be super impressed.
There you go.
Right, Mr. Pete,
Last
we
thing.
literally have one more thing to do, so I'm going to put the tremolo back on. We're going to adjust the pickup height. To be honest with you, again, there's no real rules here. The closer the pickup is to the string, the louder it becomes, the further away, the quieter it becomes. It does change the tonality very slightly. You'll also find as well, if you have your pickup wound up too close to the string, the magnetic pull from the pickup starts to stop the string vibrating properly. On a Strat, where you've got the ability to change the height of the pickup on both sides. In fact, most guitars will allow you to do that. You can, of course, if you want to, you could have the bass end nearer the strings and the treble end further away, and that will make the pickup sound more bassy, or you can do the opposite.
Yeah.
We noticed on this, we just felt that middle pickup was
the back
just
pickup.
A bit high.
Yeah, I thought the back pickup as well needed to come back down a little bit. See that bit there?
So simple and easy to do.
Yeah.
Just be slightly careful again. The screws have they are a certain length. If you keep unscrewing to the point where the pickup comes out of the screw, you have got to take the scratch plate off to reattach it, which is a bit of a faff. That's it. Again, there is no right or wrong with this. You can tweak around with this all day long until you get a sound that you like. Or if you have a preference and you know your guitars, you can just do it by eye like that. That's fine. Look, man, that...
There you go. You should plug it in.
I'm going to screw the black... No, you're the player. I'm going to screw this back, and you can literally go, holy moly, that is the best classic vibe Strat I've ever played out the box.
I love the way that plates look, that neck plates looks.
This, yeah, it's very cool, isn't it?
It's cool, isn't it?
I'll just screw this back on. We absolutely didn't pick Squier, because their guitars come through particularly bad. In fact, to be honest with you, the opposite. Squier Classic Vibe typically come through pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But I think we just think most guitars that come out of the Far East, particularly the ones, as I said, that you know, if it goes by sea or it's spent a bit of time in a dock or a container. In fact, at the moment,
on a warehouse
you've probably seen in the news, you know, shipping congestion and stuff is probably the worst it's ever been. So lots of guitars are maybe in storage for longer than you'd like. A little, you know, what have we spent? I don't know, half an hour maybe doing stuff there to this guitar.
Yeah.
It's just a massive improvement.
Massive improvement. And if you can do these things yourself, you know, don't be scared. Just have a go, you know.
Pete?
Yeah?
Would you like to do the honours?
Can?
Tell me what you think of that guitar.
Okay, then let's have a listen to what it sounds like. So you got the trem. You can go both ways now. I mean, I love these classic vibe guitars. They are just great value.
I think we could have done
but
that.
You can feel that the frets are nice and smooth on here now. It definitely it's great with tens on it, but that's my personal opinion.
I honestly feel most guitar you could do that to guitars up to about 500 or 600 quid. I think you know would all benefit from that. Once you get above that, you're typically finding that again the factory that's made the guitar has probably spent that little bit more time doing the finish and everything.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go, man. And it does the test.
I didn't really use anything tool-wise that was particularly complicated or specialist.
No. You use a screwdriver, Allen key.
That's fairly specialist, but again, you didn't need one of those.
Well, you can buy one if you want.
I got to say, I think the Monte Espresso stuff is amazing.
I mean, the difference.
For the dark fretboards. The nut sauce, everybody should have some nut sauce.
Yeah. And that fret thing, man.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with that.
Makes such a huge difference.
Yeah.
And actually,
definitely
I know
keeping
that
this.
because I've seen people go, well, they get a guitar, you know, they buy one of these guitars or a Squier Bullet, and it comes in with these frets that, you know, and they go, oh, they're scratchy. That's all you need is that.
That took me like 1 minute.
Yeah, and you don't have to send it back because of that.
Yeah.
All you can do is get one of those, and then it's sorted. You know, put a steel wool on there.
Come on, John Mayer, give us some.